Hi guys, it's Phoebe. Welcome back to my channel. Once again, trying a different kind of setup. We'll see if it works. Luckily, I guess I'm moving soon, and hopefully at my new location, I can set up a better situation. That being said, let's jump right into it with the books that I read in May. Starting off, I'd like to say, as usual, as it has been recently for me, this is in no particular order. I'm just reaching into my bin full of books, and this has also been a recent habit of mine. I read more books on like Kindle Unlimited. I don't think any of them were noteworthy one way or another, like good or bad, last month, so I'm just not going to go into them at all. You can follow me on Goodreads if you want to see actually every book that I read every month. I think that's linked somewhere on my profile on YouTube. Anyway, one of the books I read in May was Clytemnestra by Costanza Casati. I really enjoyed this book. It is basically a retelling of the Iliad and the Odyssey from the perspective of our title character, Clytemnestra. Mostly it's just her story of her life. I thought this was really interesting, and the author said about this, she wrote it from Clytemnestra's perspective because she's a character in history who often gets cast in a really negative light, and she wanted to explore her perspective of things and why maybe she made the choices that she did in these different, myths and legends and epic poems and things like that. So like I said, I really enjoyed this. I feel like we're entering an era of exploring feminine rage in art, like in music and movies and other media and things. That seems to be a topic that's coming up more and more, and I really found this true with this book, Clytemnestra. If you're familiar with these stories at all, does face a lot of hardships, and this book is a lot about her feeling the way that she feels for a reason, and getting to express her anger how she wants to. So I would recommend this book if you have an interest in Greek mythology and things of that nature. Also in May, I read Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This is the sequel to Ninth House. Ninth House, I truly don't remember that much about how it went at this point. I liked this book a lot. It made me want to go back and reread Ninth House. I remembered enough where the story made sense here, but I wanted to go back and see how I felt about Ninth House. I felt like this was a book that didn't get a lot of great reviews, and then some of the people who I enjoy watching their content and respect their opinions on most of the books, they rated this negatively, and I liked it. Does it spoil Ninth House if I say what it's about? So our main character, Alex, is in a secret magical society at Yale, and there's multiple of these secret magical societies. In this book, her and her friends are trying to open a portal to hell to save another one of their friends who got trapped in hell in the previous book. Yeah, I feel like you could, anyway. So that being said, I think people's complaints were about the magic in this book or it seeming disorganized. I don't know, I didn't have those same complaints. Just really liked it. So, that's Hellbent. All right, next up is I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. If you are at all in the true crime community, I'm sure you've heard about this book. So this is published posthumously. The author, Michelle McNamara, was a woman who spent years, if not decades, I don't think it was decades, years, a really long time though, looking into the then unsolved murders and rapes committed by the Golden State Killer, which was actually a name she coined for him. He used to be called the East Area Rapist. But he also committed crime. That was when for the crimes he committed in Sacramento, the east side of Sacramento, and then there were more crimes he committed like further south. So this is all of her research into trying to track this man down, basically as an amateur investigator. Unfortunately, she passed right before. Was it right before? It was like a couple of years before. He finally got caught due to DNA evidence, which was what she suspected was going to be what caught him in the end. So I thought this was really interesting. As someone who enjoys true crime, it was interesting to see how far deep down the rabbit hole someone who's just like a normal person can end up going. In the afterword, it kind of talks about how law enforcement, when they did finally catch the killer, that she didn't help catch him. But I think even if she didn't help catch him, she helped bring attention to this case, because the crimes that he committed were like decades ago by the time he was caught. So I feel like it had kind of fallen out of the public eye, and she kind of helped, like just because these people had been raped and or murdered like decades ago, their lives and the repercussions from this like still matter and are still important. And anyway, it's a very interesting read if that's something that you're into. Next up is The Hearts of Horses by Molly Gloss. This was a pretty short read. And for the most part, I liked it. It kind of fell apart for me a little bit at the end, but it's fine. This is about a young woman, kind of like during World War I era, where like our classic, like out west, like cowboy rancher kind of life is starting to shift into a more modern version of agriculture. And also a lot of men who would typically be farming or ranching are overseas fighting in World War I. So this woman is going around and in a small community in Oregon and is training young horses, or just horses that haven't been trained, for the community. And a lot of it is about her bringing the community together and the community coming together for her, and just like you get little snippets of like all the different lives of people in this small town. Let me go get my dog. She's barking. Anyway, it was a nice book. I really enjoyed reading it. It wasn't life-changing or anything. I probably wouldn't recommend you go out of your way to pick it up. But it was a nice read. I'm not mad about it. All right, next up is Hidden Salem by Kay Cooper. This apparently is in a series, I guess, called a Bishop/Special Crimes Unit novel. So from what I've gathered, this series focuses around a special FBI group where all of the members have some sort of psychic power. I can't remember anything about this book now. Reading the back of the cover did not bring anything back to me whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't think I gave this book a great rating, and even if I didn't to begin with, I would definitely say now that if I can't remember anything about it, it had to have been super unremarkable. So that's where I stand on that. Next up is The Book of Lost Friends by Lisa Wingate. This is kind of flashing back and forth between a freed slave woman who is, it starts out, she's in Louisiana in 1875, and then also in Louisiana in 1987, a young first year teacher who is working at a kind of run down Louisiana school with more at-risk youth type of situation, and she's trying to figure out how to handle her students, and trying to understand the struggles that they're going through. The more historical parts set in the 1800s, I don't know, I never really emotionally connected with those characters. It was really written, I felt like there was a lot of telling and not a lot of showing, and there did feel like there was kind of a distance with them, and I didn't really understand what was going on with them. And then for the like modern parts of the story, this first year teacher is a white woman at a predominantly black school, and it just came off, to me, I guess it's such a hard, like, fine line to walk of trying not to make her like a white savior kind of situation. So I didn't love that. And then there's also like a twist or like a kind of reveal about her at the end where I was like, that did absolutely nothing for the story. You could have just left it out. So this had potential-ish, but I ended up not really loving it. And next up is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. At this point, I think everyone and their cousin has read this book. This book was not for me. So it follows our main character, Theo, who, as a boy, is in a bombing incident at an art museum. His mom ends up being killed at this bombing. His dad has already kind of like left the picture. And he ends up acquiring, in the crazy aftermath of this situation, he walks out of the museum basically with this old painting of the goldfinch. Most of the book follows him throughout his really tumultuous youth, and Donna Tartt has a very beautiful writing style, and so in that case I enjoyed it, but it's really hard to read like a hot, I don't know, almost 400 pages of just like a delinquent boy. And then when it finally gets to some action involving the painting, because the book promises you, like, what does it say on the back? Theo is alienated, unmoored, and in love, and drawn inexorably, sorry, I probably mispronounced that, by the power of that painting into a narrowing, dangerous circle. Actually, I found the painting didn't have to do much with Theo's problems. He just was a kid, a person who had, because the book eventually like jumps forward to his adulthood, and it's like he just has a rough adulthood because he had a really rough childhood and like never figured things out. And I just find him a really unlikable character. Like, there were a lot of things that he did where I was like, okay, I understand going so in depth into his childhood so that when we see him as an adult, we understand, like, he never had an adult, like, to model to him, like, a healthy relationship, or, like, he didn't really have people there supporting him, so he's kind of always felt like he just has to do what he needs to do to get by. But there was a really problematic, like, starting from him being a child on into his adulthood, there's this girl that he's really obsessed with. She was at the site of the bombing with him and also survived. And for the entire book, he's, like, really obsessed with her. She does not reciprocate those feelings. And a lot of the story just, like, delves into how bitter he is that she doesn't feel the same way. And to me, that was just really icky and unenjoyable to read, because on the one hand, I'm like, I can understand that we're not supposed to, like, that Theo is not supposed to be, like, a perfect person. But it was just really difficult to read from a man's perspective, how obsessed he is with this girl who doesn't feel the same way, like, doesn't owe him feeling the same way. And he really expects her to owe him these, what he thinks are, like, romantic feelings, but is really just like a gross, creepy obsession. Maybe I'm completely off base with that, but that's how I felt reading it. So I cannot say that I enjoyed this. It was so long when I felt like it didn't have to be. And again, like overall, Theo is not a likable person. And I guess whether or not you're supposed to read him as likable, even if the intentions going into it were like, oh, he's gonna be like morally gray or whatever, it just sucks to read. This book is long. Like, how many pages is it? Like over 700 pages of just a guy being a gross guy. So yeah, I didn't. Again, Donna Tartt's writing is really beautiful, but the story that she had to tell, to me, was really unimpressive. Next up is Fable by Adrienne Young. This book was okay. It is definitely like YA, or is it even like middle grade maybe? It read very juvenile. It's also very short. Weirdly a book where I was like, I feel like it could have been longer. There's a second book which I do want to read, and I kind of just wished, I mean, I guess I haven't seen, maybe the second book is like a lot bigger. Feel like they could have just made it one book though. It does end on kind of a cliffhanger. But anyway, so this book is about a young girl named Fable. Her mother died and her father basically abandoned her on this island full of crooks and criminals when she was a child. And so she's been scraping to get by so she can buy passage to the mainland and hopefully reunite with her father, because when he left her, he promised her an inheritance when she finds him. So this book is about her getting back to her father and kind of unveiling some family secrets and the, you know, kind of piratey, swashbuckling-ish adventures she has along the way. Again, not like a life-changing read, not like a super great book, but entertaining. And since it did end on a cliffhanger, I definitely do want to read the second book and see what happens next. All right, next up we have, I don't know how to say that word, Anansi Boys, by Neil Gaiman. This is about a man whose father dies. Let me rewind a bit. He's moved to England. He's about to marry this English woman, and his dad dies back home in Florida. And he goes back for that and kind of starts to unravel some family secrets. And it turns out that his father is an ancient African god. And I'm trying to remember, because now we're reaching the bottom of the pile, so it's been a long time since I read this book, and there's been a lot of books that I've read in between. Does the person he meets say it's his brother? He's like, I don't have a brother, but then he ends up meeting this guy, or this guy comes to him who looks like exactly the same as him, and it just starts really screwing his life up, doing crazy, silly things. And so our main character, who goes by Fat Charlie, is trying to get his life back from this stranger and figure out what's going on, since he's basically a demigod. This book was okay. To me it was kind of like American Gods by Neil Gaiman, where I like Neil Gaiman. I get, like, the writing is fine, but it just didn't draw me in or entertain me as much as like Stardust did. So kind of middle ground on this book. Next up, we've got Visual Thinking by Temple Grandin. Depending on what circles you run in, you might be familiar with the name Temple Grandin. She's a pretty big advocate. She's autistic and has kind of she's revolutionized a lot of agriculture regarding livestock, because she is a visual thinker, and so has been able to, over the past like few decades, I want to say, really change the way that we handle livestock in a setting of like the pens that we use for cattle, how we transport livestock, that kind of thing. So as far as like raising, breeding, slaughtering livestock, if you're in that kind of community, you've probably heard about Temple Grandin. If you're in like the autistic community, you might have heard of Temple Grandin. Anyway, so this is a book about her explaining kind of what visual thinking is and talking about the benefits that different kinds of thinkers can bring to projects. I did not vastly enjoy reading this book. There were some claims that Temple made that she did not have research to back up, which was annoying, because she would like state something like a fact and I'd be like, oh, like very interesting, and she wouldn't. I don't know. She was like drawing from personal experience, which is fine in some instances, but there were a lot of instances where it wasn't fine, or like, I don't know. There was also a lot of fangirling over Elon Musk. Like the first time she talked about him at length, I was like, okay, whatever. And then like the next chapter, she did the same thing, like went on for a couple of paragraphs about Elon Musk. And I was like, what is happening here? And she just kept doing it, where like every chapter she'd be like, and Elon Musk, like this, and this. And I was like, this is weird. And I don't share your opinion on him. And then my other complaint would be a lot of the times for her examples of like the strengths that visual thinkers have, she would give an example of like some kind of scenario, whether it was like at NASA or like transporting an animal. She would be like, and this thing happened that like had like catastrophic or just like bad side effects. And she was like, if I was there, I'm a visual thinker, and so I would have looked at that and I would have solved the problem so that would not have happened. And it was just kind of a weird thing to assert, where it was like, maybe you wouldn't have, though, Temple. Like, maybe just because you're a visual thinker doesn't mean that you would solve everything so much better than all these other people who are also really smart, and for all you know, might also be visual thinkers. Like, it's really easy to look back at something that happened in the past and be like, oh yeah, well, if I was there, I would have known to not, I don't know. I just didn't love that. So that's how I felt about that book. Okay, and last for physical books that I read in May is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Anyway, so in this book, a young woman she's on the brink of dying. So kind of in the interim of her like passing on, she is in this library, and she has the opportunity to, like, it's an endless library, and so she just gets to pick books off the shelf, and it's different lives. So there's a librarian there, and she basically is like, she picks, like, if she had made a different choice in life, like, she's like, show me a life where, like, what if I had kept going out with, like, this boyfriend? And so she gets to take the book, and, you know, it's like she gets dropped into this life of, like, here's what it would be like if you had made this choice. And so she gets to keep doing that with, like, you know, different things that she regretted in her life. Like, if she had picked a different job, if she had just, like, little things, like, what if I had done this differently? It's something I regret. What would that life look like? And so it's following her jumping through all these different lives and kind of making some decisions about seeing, like, what would be different and whether or not that would be good or bad, and deciding whether or not she wants to go back to her old life and what would she do differently if she could. I have seen some criticism on this book for being, like, too heavy-handed or, like, too obvious with, like, the moral that it's trying to get across to you, which I think is, like, don't have regrets on things in life, because regardless of what choice you make, there's gonna be, like, good and bad outcomes for wherever your life goes, and it's kind of just, you just have to make do with what you have. Like, you can't regret too much different things that have happened. Just make the best of what you can. And I didn't mind that it was so heavy-handed, because literally just with a synopsis of the story, I think you can tell that it's gonna be kind of obvious where things are going. Like, no, it's not a subtle book. So that didn't really bother me. And it's kind of short, so it's just like a fun little read that I think had an overall good message that was decently executed. So that is the vast majority of the books that I read in May. Again, there are some that I read on my Kindle that I'm not going to bother to review here. Also because I don't think anyone would want to sit through a video that long of me rambling. So thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again next time. Bye!